sixth link in our chain podcast. As Carl mentioned last time, the chain, we've well and truly got a chain now. So on today's episode, as got here from the last episode via Michael Biehn, who was in Robert Rodriguez's Planet Terror.
Following the Planet Terror episode, which dropped a few days ago, we had a pretty amazing thing happen on social. Jack, talk us through it.
Yeah, so I got a notification and it said Freddy Rodriguez, so El Rey himself, tagged me in a post. And he actually saved one of our highlights, talking about that amazing hallway scene that he was in, the amazing tracking shot, the ridiculously badass backflip. So he saved that video, posted it on his wall, and just talked about how much fun he had filming that scene. So Freddy Rodriguez, if you're listening, thank you so much, sir, and keep being a badass.
Yeah, amazing, great, and just really nice to think that people are sort of seeing us out there. And I mean, I really didn't expect to hear from El Rey. That is very, very cool.
So before we get into James Cameron's classic, we're going to do a bit of housekeeping, as is always the way. I love to hear what Carl's been watching and vice versa. So Carl, take us through what you've been watching in recent weeks.
Yeah, great. Well, in a bit of sort of coincidental timing, a friend decided to have a sort of back garden screening of Michael Keaton's Beetlejuice. It's perfect timing. I'm actually off to see the sequel tomorrow. Now, I have a feeling you maybe going to talk about that, because I saw on Jacked In, if you look up in the top corner, there's a link to Jack's review of Beetlejuice. Is that what it's called? Beetlejuice?
Yeah, Beetlejuice. It's don't say it a third time. For the love of God, don't say it a third time.
Very good point, Jack. So Beetlejuice from 1988, which I think is probably sort of really well known for being kind of the film. Obviously, you've done Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
From the director of Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Adam and Barbara are ghosts.
What's the good of being a ghost if you can't frighten people away?
But this was the film that really launched Tim Burton as Tim Burton, the kind of brand that he became. And it was a film that when it came out, I remember enjoying bits of it. It was interesting to go back to. It is one of the most 80s films I think you can ever watch, and I mean that in a loving way, because I love the 80s. It's very, very cool. Studio sets, great big props, amazing sort of just kind of really inventive special effects. I mean, I think it was pretty groundbreaking in some of its special effects at the time, and really, really enjoyed it. I guess my biggest complaint still remains, which is I really kind of am not a massive fan of Michael Keaton as Beetlejuice.
It's showtime.
Learn to throw your voice, fool your friends, fun and party.
Wow.
I know it's really controversial, but I just find him irritating more than I find him funny. So I really enjoyed the film. I enjoyed bits of him, but I think ultimately for me, it was on a technical level, I really enjoyed it. I feel the finale is pretty weak, and I think that was always my feeling the last time I saw it. The finale doesn't really work for me. It all wraps up a bit too quick, a bit too quick. But it's got all the kind of flying in the sky, dancing numbers, and all that stuff, and that stuff is still just massively entertaining. So I really enjoyed it. It is a really good film. Probably, to be fair, I enjoyed it more now than maybe I did when it came out. So it has aged in that regard. But I'm intrigued going into the sequel, because I wasn't the biggest fan of Beetlejuice. So kind of going into the sequel 30 years later, or whatever it is, 40 years later, it's going to be it's going to be interesting. So I think that's probably a good tag, wrestling tag there to you, Jack. Far away.
Yeah. I mean, first off, in terms of not liking the original too much, what I've found since I posted the review, because it's blew up online, so many people commented saying didn't enjoy it, didn't like the original, and it's kind of you were never going to then, sort of thing. If you didn't like the original, you're probably not going to like the new one. In saying that, and I'm going to try and keep it spoiler free as best I can, I'm just going to speak in generalities. So I wrote, like I say, you can see the full review at jackedinmovies.com, but pick out the main bits. I was disappointed with the sequel, but I was a huge fan of the original. It's not only an amazing 80s movie, it's the most Tim Burton movie I've ever seen. All of his styles just all over that entire, and he had a bit of edge back then when he was breaking out. He had more edge. It was like the original was a 15, and it always felt like something I shouldn't be watching. It was like childish in the right parts, but it was also adult, and it felt more like so. In contrast, the original ran like a darkly comedic horror for me. The new one is more akin to the animated series, if anyone ever watched it, in that it's more cartoonish. Instead of being a sinister spectre, Beetlejuice is more like a comedy sidekick.
Spill your guts. Who wants to go first? All right, I will. See, I'm willing to do the work.
He's not like he was never really a villain in the original, but he was more. He caused more trouble than he solved, and that's just not really the way in this. He sort of saves the day a lot, but the main issue with this sequel is too many kooks or villains in this case. It's like there's several stories happening at once, and it's kind of just like pick a lane. And you talk about the ending feeling rushed in the original. My God, you've got like, for argument's sake, let's say there's 5 villains or 5 to 6 characters, all stories running simultaneously. And then it gets to the end and it's like, we've got to wrap all their stories up now. And it all happens within like the space of 5 minutes. And it's just like, but it doesn't, the original worked because of the 80s sensibilities at the time, and Tim Burton sort of had the monopoly on that style, which he doesn't anymore. And our culture's completely changed since then as well. So it's either you change all the jokes to fit today's audience, or you keep them and they fall on deaf ears because no one knows what's going on. But it's just a convoluted story. I think that's my main takeaway. But yeah, not spoiling anymore because I want to see what Carl thinks, and I don't want to feed him too much negativity going in and influence him too much.
Yeah, well, to be fair, that is all I know about it, is what you've just said, because I've avoided everything. I haven't looked at any trailers, I haven't read any reviews, I've done absolutely nothing. So yeah, I mean, I'll go in with open mind, but I think I'm less likely to be disappointed because I'm not such a big fan of the original. I've just realised, like, my comments about the first one make me sound like, again, the killer of joy. But I did find it. I actually think it's very good. The first one, like in terms of the characters, I just feel like it's Beetlejuice himself. If they kind of do something slightly different with that character, that could be interesting. I think, because he was just on the wrong side. Like, literally, if there's the line, he was just on the wrong side of being just a bit too gross. Like. It's like I think he kind of and I know that's what he was going for. I know that's what the character's meant to be. It just I was just like, I didn't find it funny. I just found him not a slime bag. Which he is.
Fun police as always, killer of joy.
But no, there's definitely a lot of stuff I really enjoy in that movie, and I'll be intrigued to see sort of how they sort of approach it. I was happy to see as well. It's only an hour and 40. I was expecting it to probably be 2 hours plus, and I just thought, the original. The one thing you can say, it's just 90 minutes, bang on, perfect 80s, movie, and to only be 10 minutes longer, I was like, okay, that's going to be pretty painless either way. So.
I think, like I say, see what you think. It's got practical effects, and from that standpoint, it is a breath of fresh air. But you almost don't have time to enjoy them because there's so much going on. But a quote that I can't take credit for, but I think Kevin Smith said it best in An Evening with Kevin Smith back in 2002. In that he said, "Didn't we say all we needed to say with the first Beetlejuice?" It's kind of like, does it? He said, "No, I completely agree with that." So that's my main takeaway.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Okay. Well, I also watched another film that, to be fair, I've been wanting to see for a very long time. Like, I do love certain trash directors, and I think one of the best in the 80s was Albert Pyun. And one of my sort of not so secret kind of guilty pleasures is I'm a massive fan of Cyborg, the Van Damme movie, movie, and so basically one thing I realised, because I also love a good bit of trashy Sword and Sandals, and I hadn't ever properly watched The Sword and the Sorcerer by Albert Pyun from about 84, 85, and that's man, what fun I had with that! I'll tell you, that was great. Like, it was, it's a very bizarre film. Have you seen it?
I have not seen it, so tell me all about it.
So it has instantly shot into my top 5 sort of barbarian sword and sorcery movies, without doubt. It's a very small pool to choose from, to be fair. There's probably 5 good ones, but and the rest are Italian.
Just 5.
Basically, it is definitely like shot in there. It is effectively, although it's a sort of kind of revenge story. It's basically kind of a fun adventure movie. But where people get cut in half and their hearts ripped out. It has the weirdest. I mean, the tone is so uneven. Like literally, you can get whiplash watching it, because
those are the best kind sometimes.
Yeah, it's like completely insane. They go for this like R-rated, brutal violence in a few places, and yet the kind of action sequences otherwise have the tone of like an Indiana Jones film. They're really sort of jolly adventure music and people getting hit on the head with vases, and it's all a bit Benny Hill at time, you know. And so basically, like, it's this weird mix. But the characters in it are really fun. The lead, I mean, basically, to all intents and purposes, I think he wanted to make a Conan movie. It wasn't given the rights, because the main character is effectively Conan by another name. But it's got a brilliant bad guy performance from Richard Lynch, who was in his absolute prime as a bad guy in, you know, stuff like Invasion USA and things like that around that time. So basically, like, he really sort of brings his A game. He is like brilliantly like shit heel awful kind of Richard Lynch. And there's like demons, and it's people swinging on chandeliers, and there's a 3-bladed sword that when he presses a button, 2 of the blades shoot out into people. It's completely mad, but huge fun. 80 minutes, bang, done, loved it. Big recommend if you're into kind of cheesy fantasy. It's up there with like the Beastmaster and but obviously not as good. As good as the top of the mountain, which for me is always going to be Conan the Barbarian. It's kind of on climbing the mountain, but it's not at the peak. Yeah. So there we go.
Awesome stuff. No, I'll definitely be getting involved in that. As soon as you said Beastmaster, what a comparison. So I'll be getting involved.
Hugely underrated, by the way.
Where can I watch it? Where can other people watch it?
It's on Tubi, which has recently launched in the UK. So basically, you can watch it for free on Tubi with ads. But pretty short.
There you go. Happy days. Alrighty. So since the last episode, I wanted to make a point of mentioning this one, as it's not only the most interesting thing I've seen since the last episode, it's the most interesting movie I've seen in a while. It's so innovative. It's so, talk about Beetlejuice breaking new ground in terms of showing us something we've never seen before. Hundreds of Beavers. Mike Cheslick's Hundreds of Beavers. It's not a porno. It's basically, I watched it and it flew under the radar, but it was shown at Tyneside Cinema here in Newcastle. Marketing wise, it's absolutely tremendous. You go on the pages and they've just done these like mock-ups of famous movie posters and added these people in costumes as beavers and all the artwork. It's a comedy. It's filmed like a black and white sort of Buster Keaton type movie. So from back in the day, but it's very Looney Tunes-esque like physics. And it's just, it's such a good time. It's so slapstick. It's so out there. Visually, it's absolutely gorgeous to watch, but it's actually got a story that keeps you engaged and keeps you guessing and keeps you wondering what's going to happen next throughout. But like I say, in terms of a breath of fresh air, in terms of originality, it's a homage to Keaton and Looney Tunes and Chaplin and things like that. But it was made on a like $150,000 budget, and it just goes to show what you can turn out when you think smart and not hot. And it's just, I can't recommend the movie enough, and I'm so happy that I went to see it in cinema. It's available now. I think you can rent or buy, but the fact that I saw it on the big screen, and I don't want to spoil, but I just want people to watch it for sure.
And I mean, you had me at Keaton and Chaplin and that. So is that sort of physical comedy, or is it kind of CG stuff, or is it kind of like, are they doing practical stunts?
It's physical. It is physical comedy, but in terms of the CG and stuff like that, but like in terms of how they make these Looney Tunes physics happen, it's very Cabinet of Dr. Caligari sort of thing. In terms of the backdrops but watch the trailer. Anyone listening now, watch the trailer. You'll see exactly what I mean, because it's so hard to explain, but that's a good thing, because it's like, well, I haven't seen shit like this before, so I can't really compare it. The only way I can is, like I say, Keaton and Looney Tunes and Dr. Caligari.
And is that a first time director? Because I've not heard of this film at all, So
he's made other stuff in the past in like a similar vein, and I think he's like quite attached to the cast that he uses as well. I haven't seen his other work, but I've looked into it, and it looks like it's cut from a similar cloth in terms of tone and what he likes. But yeah, its biggest failing is that no one's talking about it. So which is such a shame. Whether or not it's just I just fall within the niche of the target audience that loves a movie like this, but I would argue that everyone should get involved. It got made in 2022, but it's only hit UK theaters, a select number of UK cinemas recently. But I think it was already available to stream before it even hit the cinemas over here. So yeah.
Wow, it's a different world. Like, things are just coming out so quick. I realised by the time our last episode published, Kinds of Kindness was already out. You were talking about it at the cinema.
Yeah.
That was already about Disney, literally like 2 weeks later.
I think that speaks volumes to the type of movie Kinds of Kindness is.
Yeah, it would all be good if streaming actually paid a bit more. But I think I feel for these lower budget films, it must be very very difficult. But yeah, give it your support, everyone, and go out and support some indie filmmakers. Okay, everybody, welcome back. And now it is time to gaze into the abyss and hope the abyss isn't staring back at us. So basically, the abyss, James Cameron. So I've already sort of less than hinted, I think been very, very obvious about my love of Mr. Cameron and his cinematic output. And the abyss is an interesting one. So 1989, it's regarded, I think, very favourably over the years. Came out, as most Cameron things do, with two different versions. There was a theatrical cut and then a director's cut that was released a few years later. It's a water-based action sort of adventure, kind of, but like sort of also with a hint of a kind of Close Encounters 2001 sort of intelligence to it, which I think, marked it out. At a time, there was, I sort of feel like at the time, there was quite a lot of water-based films that came out, but they were all kind of horror films. And my history with this was a little bit of an odd one because I was coming off the back of Aliens, literally changing my life, my view of cinema, Aliens being the greatest thing I'd ever seen. And so I thought it was going to be a kind of big, rollicking action alien adventure horror or something. I wasn't quite ready for the sort of cerebral element of the film that it brought. But that's not to say he doesn't bring his action A game, because there is some great set pieces.
It's brilliant. You said this as soon as you said Close Encounters. Yeah. So this is, for me, Cameron's Close Encounters.
Yeah.
That's a brilliant comparison.
So basically, this I think the story off screen is probably just as interesting as the one on screen, because this was regarded as one of the most technically complicated shoots of all time. Yeah. Probably will never be repeated. I think the actors within it had a pretty tough time.
But for anyone that hasn't seen it, although I can't imagine who exactly you people are, Carl, it's an absolute classic. It's a mastery of cinema, but story-wise, take us through it.
So it's about basically an incident that happens right at the opening with a nuclear submarine that falls into a trench after something under the water shorts the power, and basically there is a experimental undersea mining vehicle that is Cameron really bringing his tech A game there, and the crew, a motley band of kind of deep sea miners, are enlisted by the US Army to recover the submarine, and shenanigans ensue. Jack, take us away. What were your the strengths and weaknesses of the film?
Okay, so let's start on a positive. Let's start on a positive. It was very hard to find the negatives in this movie, just because it's Cameron. But let's start on the loves anyway. So I'm going to start with an obvious one, and it's just something that Cameron does so well, and it's been across all of his career. It's visuals. And Carl was saying before how this has still withstood the test of time. It, like, you rewatching it, apart from a few scenes, and we'll get into that on the negatives, this movie's just not dated at all. Like, it's absolutely gorgeous, like from head to toe. And he had such a defined style in the 80s. I'll let Carl chuck in his 2 cents. But for me, you had like 80s was big on horror. Everything was very neon. Everything was clunky, like a contrast of Ridley Scott's Alien. It was very industrial. And then Cameron came along. Everything that he does, technology-wise, is so sleek. It feels like reflective metal sort of thing. And I can't, maybe you can do a better way of describing it, but technology-wise, everything that he does looks so polished and looks so clean, but visually stunning. I mean, what are your thoughts? That's my first.
Yeah, thing. I mean, there's nobody better in cinema at hardware, at putting hardware on camera than James Cameron. Like, and he's still doing it. You know, you think about the stuff that was even in the last like Avatar film and stuff. You know, he creates futuristic tech that you believe could really exist, and I think everything feels practical, like it's been researched, like it's been designed by engineers who really can see where things are going to go. I mean, everything in Aliens, you know, that film was just so stuffed with those kind of military toys, and this, you know, the rig itself is just a brilliant piece of design. But what I love about it is it's designed in a way to enhance the film. It doesn't just look good; it actually creates atmosphere, because the set that they built for this rig is so tight, so compact, so like claustrophobic, that is just a massive part of the kind of when things really kick off in this film. It makes such great use of those corridor spaces, but it feels just so real. You know, it feels like this is genuinely something that exists.
My thoughts exactly. For all intents and purposes, I made this note that it's funny that this was on the back of Aliens, because for me, this very much felt like a deep space movie, but like south as opposed to up. And there's just certain scenes like the heavy breathing and the masks and stuff. Like I was getting anxiety watching it. I'm claustrophobic anyway, but like when they're underwater and stuff, I was like, oh fuck! Like I suppose this is what it would be like to be in space, even in front of 2 aliens, and then this. It just every shot that he uses looks perfectly orchestrated, and it just takes the story forward. And I mean, the movie itself, it's a long running movie, but everything just felt perfectly placed. Everything in this movie looks gorgeous, and I don't know how else to say it. I'm trying to think of synonyms to make myself sound smarter than I actually am, but it's just so fucking gorgeous to watch from start to finish.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, because, you know, most of it was practical, you know, bar a few obviously key moments there, it hasn't aged too poorly, because it's like they were shooting underwater, which kind of hides, I'm guessing, a few sins anyway, because that was really, really hard to do. But because it's lit so well and shot so well underwater, it just it feels like it could have been made yesterday. The only difference being, if they made it yesterday, it would be all CGI. You know, it'd be all CGI. And when you look at the craft that went into this film, it is absolutely stunning to look at, and it just makes me really sad that that's just probably never going to be seen again. You know, like I said earlier, I don't think there is this film will never be made again in this way, because it probably nearly destroyed the mental health of every single person involved in making it. So let's not hide from that. This was basically torture for everyone involved, apart from probably Cameron. But the end result, wow, you sometimes got to wonder if it's worth suffering for your art, right? Because I think it's an incredible movie to look at.
For sure. And I guess my second love of this movie, you can merge it with the first one, but I decided to make it its own point because I think it deserves it, is the water in this movie, the sea, like every bit of but I mean every bit that you see. So when they're in the sea, when they're in the hull, and it's all practical, the set. And I wanted to make this such a point because this is, for me, he's got such a defined style, but there is no movie more Cameron than this. Like he does certain things well in other movies, his strengths you can see here and there, but for this, he's firing on all cylinders. Everything that Cameron does well is in this movie, but especially water. You watch, I mean, he started out with Piranha 2, so straight away, like that paved his way into the industry. And then you've got obviously the Abyss, and then you've got Avatar: Way of the Water, but he does it so well. Like he just belongs in the sea. And then obviously that led on to Titanic. I just feel like water in its own right deserves to be mentioned in Cameron's career and this movie.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely an obsession of his, isn't it? I mean, it's because even off camera, he spends a huge amount of time in the sea diving, and so it's clearly always been a passion. I think it's quite funny that I love the idea that making flying piranhas was what made him a lifelong water obsessive. It's probably not true, but I'm now going to think that from now because that just makes me laugh.
It's true. It's true. Technically true.
Just like flying piranhas, this water thing, it's great. But yeah, I think it's really interesting because it's like he establishes himself as this director of this amazing industrial military complex kind of action movies, and then this kind of shows his other side, which has gone on to influence. You can see it, especially in Avatar. I mean, Avatar is clearly the line from this film to Avatar is so clear. It's like it's got the theory, the themes of kind of peace and love, and let's all get on, and kind of the kind of anti-military sort of sentiment, and the kind of that sort of alien involvement in and humans, and how we sort of get on. All of that stuff was laid here. Technically, I think it set up Titanic. I don't know whether he wanted to make Titanic at this point, whether that was a dream project, but kind of everything he learned making this movie is in Titanic. So I think this is possibly the most crucial film in his catalogue, if not my favourite. It's definitely, technically, I think it's the one where Cameron I think he just mapped out the way he wanted the rest of his filmmaking career came from The Abyss, because it sort of just encapsulates everything that he then went on to do, and it's interesting. It's interesting that he's gone from making like the best water-based movie, and then does like Avatar 2 Way of Water, which, to be fair, although CG, I did think they did shoot a lot of that stuff practically.
Yeah, for sure.
Whereas like other directors, Aquaman or whatever, it would just be all CG. It's all CG, and he's the only director willing to just get himself wet and his crew wet, I think, to make these things the way they look. And
it's funny that you mentioned Aquaman. So any series Entourage fans out there, they normally have like fake movies within that series because it follows Chase, which is Ethan Chase, who's like an actor in Hollywood and stuff like that. And then one of the movies that he stars in the series is James Cameron's Aquaman. So it's just like, I've always thought like, what would a James Cameron Aquaman movie look like? That would be...
Yeah, that could have been it. That would have been good. Probably a more natural fit than when he was supposed to do Spider-Man or whatever it was. With
Leo DiCaprio as Spider-Man, for sure.
Spider-Man, yeah. So it would have been... Aquaman's probably a better fit. But circling back to The Abyss, I think technically, like you say, the water. I love what you said about space and water, actually, because this film, more than any other, you're absolutely right, kind of captures, I think, just how close space and water are. And basically, it's just, you get a bit wetter, if you're in the sea. It's just like, there are so many moments where, like when he's pulling that kind of crucial, probably best scene in the movie, where, Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio lets herself drown, and such an amazing scene. And then he's bringing her back. That could easily just be somebody being sort of, carried through space, probably without the head explosion or whatever. But the decompression. There are just moments in this where absolutely you could put it in space and it would 100% work. So I think, you're right. Again, he's clearly a director who kind of takes on what he learned from one film into the next, because he lights it like a sci-fi movie, but sets underwater. And I think you're absolutely right on that point.
It's weird because it goes back, what I said earlier about his style. This is just an extra point I wanted to make. He's like I say, he's got this polished, sleek style. And usually when I think of 80s movies that sort of like disturb me, my mind always goes to gore or whatever, or violence. And he has a way of doing it without the need for blood. And the scene which does it brilliantly is when the first turn up to the sub and they open the door and you see the first dead body. And then it's like, we knew we were going to see this sort of thing, so let's just move on. And then you just see all of them just floating. And it's so haunting, but he didn't feel the need to make it violent or brutal. But that doesn't mean to say it doesn't disturb. And he has a knack for doing that where you don't see blood, but it's still... what do you think? I can explain... I'm trying to explain.
No, I know where you're coming from.
Yeah.
It's using torches and because you've got that kind of underwater vibe, it's like the torchlight and everything. It just gives it so much kind of atmosphere, and then you just see those bodies sort of drifting, as the light comes around onto them and stuff. And it's just, I mean, it's brilliantly sort of horrific. It's really, really kind of harsh. And there's other moments, similar, like the moment where basically the door shuts and that guy's face is up against the window and he's going to drown. It's far more horrific than, just seeing someone, get their head blown up or whatever. I mean, it's just like, just seeing that because it just feels real. It feels in the moment.
Back to the water. You use so much water in this movie. You can feel yourself submerging. Yeah.
And I mean, as somebody who's I grew up by the sea. I don't like deep sea at all. Like it's where, put me on a beach, I'll swim around, that's fine. But like I really like, thanks to bloody Spielberg, I won't go anywhere near the sea if it's deep and I can't see if there's a shark going to eat me. So it's like this film is just full of terror for me. It's just terror. Yeah. It's just the whole concept of it is bloody terrifying to me. Like, when they're sort of being dragged towards the lip of the abyss, and then basically, Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio goes out and stands on the edge when she first sees the creature, and it's like that. Just standing where she is, she's so calm. I was just like, I'd be shitting a brick.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not the biggest fan of the sea, but like claustrophobic, like that's my Achilles heel. And my God, like I would just like have a panic attack down there. Like I would go the route of Michael Biehn. I would descend into madness.
Yeah. Within moments.
yeah, for sure.
That's really what it does well, because it makes. The sea is just so integral to this film. Yeah. It's so much a part of what it is, but it makes it absolutely terrifying. I think, like I said, claustrophobia, from not only being in that kind of small tin can situation, almost like Das Boot or whatever, that sort of situation. But it's even once they're outside, the sea is just terrifying, and this film really makes you feel that.
It's space. It's space essentially, like deep sea space for sure.
Yeah, there's no survival. Both the environments. The reason they're so similar is because basically, if anything goes wrong, you are dead. And this film really, more than any I think I've ever seen, makes you realise just how dangerous underwater.
Absolutely.
Maybe only the last hour of Titanic that really rammed it home as well. But it's I think he's just. He's just a wizard with that stuff.
And like you said, it's his passion for the sea, and it comes across in this movie from a technical standpoint. Like he shows how everything is accomplished. He doesn't just show, well, let's go out there and then cut to a scene with the Vora. He shows the intricacies that they're going like in the Sudan, like adjusting the pressure and everything. Step by step, he shows you how they go from being underwater from inside, and it stinks of effort for that reason. It makes it believable, like you say.
It's his sort of way of doing that sort of technology side is it's almost like the absolute polar opposite of like a Marvel movie or whatever, where it's like, or kind of a lot of those sort of blockbusters where it doesn't it's all just gadget waving, hand waving, almost magic. It's just, it's a thing and it just does this. And it's just like
why or how.
Nobody cares. But I get a real kick out of that. I mean, I'm a hard sci-fi fan anyway. But the fact that he takes the time to make you believe this stuff works makes you believe in the moments where you're then having like two subs chasing each other, or the rig being dragged towards the edge, or all those things. It gives it gravity. It gives it weight, because otherwise, if you just kind of go, they just hop in the space sub and off they go. Sub, and you don't know anything about that. They're just whizzing around in a CG spacecraft or whatever. Then it's just like there's no weight to it. There's no so I think it makes you again more scared, because you kind of understand the rules. You understand these things.
Absolutely. He establishes the rules. There you go. He establishes the rules, which is why the climax and everything works so well, because all these ships and sort of sea gadgets that they're using in the final act, it's like, I know how these work now, so this is fine. I'm here for it, you know?
Yeah, I was at uni. We had a script writer lecturer who was obsessed with this film. Like he used The Abyss as his kind of example of like setup and payoff. Everything I learned about setup and payoff came from Cameron films, but basically because he was obsessed with them. But but this film in particular, there are so many things that it establishes and pays off, and the payoff matters because you understand the rules. So it's like, you know, the scene is quite harrowing with the rat, and you know that scene is necessary in terms of storytelling because you need to understand that tech when Ed Harris is going down the abyss. The way the subs work, you know, the one with the face. I can't remember what the sub they call it with the face. It's got a nickname.
I know which one you mean. Yeah.
But that one, you know, they establish that it will only work to a certain pressure, so that as soon as it goes below that, you know, the way the sub implodes, it basically, you know, you understand these vehicles are not for those pressures because they've told you that. It doesn't just happen. And you know, it's so this film is just full of little moments like that where everything they kind of establish gets paid off down the line. And
he's a wizard, and well, it leads me on to my third point, because I mean, like I say, he's firing on all cylinders. So everything that you can think of that he's done well in another movie, he does in this movie, like without a doubt. So like I say, we had the visuals, we had the water, and for me, it's another thing that he does really well, especially from a military perspective, is the camaraderie. I felt like that deserved to be a third point in its own right, because that's what he does really well. And it's mad that he does it so well, like especially in the 80s, the women are on even playing ground in terms of the banter. He does it with Mary Elizabeth. He did it with Jeanette Goldstein in Aliens, Linda Hamilton. He does strong women characters so well, but doesn't make a point of sort of like, oh, it's a strong woman character. He makes it like no, they're on an even playing field to the rest of the guys in this movie. And in the 80s, that was such a feat. But yeah, camaraderie, strong character. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, strong sort of central, you know, sort of female leads in his films. He was great for that, I think, you know. And it's really interesting, isn't it? Because I mean, there's only what two female characters in it, but they're but I don't feel either of them. There's definite moments where Ed Harris is quite a dick. Yeah. but again, they establish it's because there's just that bitterness through the breakup. I don't think he is like portrayed to actually be like an 80s chauvinistic pig or whatever. You know, it's like the way they talk about her. They talk about her because they respect her and they fear her, and they
sure.
Not because they all hate women or whatever, you know. So I think it's like she's tough, you know. She has to be, because like you can't be an engineer in the mining industry and not be in the 80s, you know. I think and because of that, you know, the transformation through their relationship really works for me. You see that softening of both of them, because kind of at the beginning they're both kind of dicks to each other, you know, because she's just as bad. He's really petty. You know, he does all these really petty things like changing the dial, which he changes it and then he turns it back, and throwing his wedding ring away, and like he's kind of acting like a bit of a man baby, really. Because
he's so glad that he hung on to that wedding ring, by the way. He is so glad that he put that back on, for sure, I bet.
Set up and pay off.
Set up and pay off.
Like, set up and pay off. It's like that was the moment my lecturer absolutely loved. Because you establish he's got this wedding ring. It's a big chunky wedding ring. It had to be to stop that door. But saves his life, saves his marriage.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. I think you know, he really obviously seems to kind of like surrounding himself with powerful women, but then at the same time he's also divorced about 4 of them. So but yeah, you know, I mean, you look how he transformed Ripley from like, you know, a strong leader of a character, but into a proper badass. You know, and so it's definitely a theme, and I think but I like the fact that with Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, her performance, you know, like I say, he's not afraid to sort of soften her, but he doesn't make her into just like, you know, she doesn't need, like when she needs saving, she doesn't get saved. She dies and has to. It's not like a damsel in distress. She makes the decision to die. And I think that is so powerful. And bloody brave beyond comprehension.
It's a brilliant moment in the movie, and especially when she comes to. I wonder if she ever asked him, like, why have I got these massive hand bruise marks on my face? It was just like, wake up.
Yeah, she recovers very quickly.
He beats the shit out of her.
Yeah. It's a tough scene, that, isn't it? It's tough. I mean, to film that was horrendous.
It's scenes that you wouldn't have found in movies like that at the time. Like, there would be more like you'd find that in like a drama or something like that, but like a sci-fi action movie, it's always lighthearted and stuff. But that scene goes on, and I didn't realize this until rewatching it. That scene goes on for an inordinate amount of time.
Yeah,
like he tried everything before he resorts to the slap, and even then, he just lies there. And I'm like, I can't remember it being this long, but it adds so much more weight. It adds so much more weight to it. It makes it more real.
100%. Yeah, I mean, you probably think she's gone, don't you? And it's but just their dynamic was brilliant. In terms of the wider cast, what he's brilliant at. I don't know if you agree with this, but like Aliens, he is exceptionally good at kind of creating very simple characters. They're almost caricatures.
Yeah.
But he gives them just enough that you love them. You go, these are great. Yeah. I want to be around these people. They're he gives them just enough. Because I wouldn't say there's anybody in the cast outside the two leads and maybe Michael Biehn who have a lot of depth to them. You've got the...
But you know exactly what kind of person they are. Yeah.
Yeah, the cowboy tough woman. You've got the kind of trucker oil rigger. You've got the conspiracy theorist with a rat. I mean, that's literally it. They're all one sentence characters.
Yeah.
But actually, they feel more than that. And I think, I always feel like a bloody old man when I'm doing this. Like my old man shouting at clouds, tell me. But like modern films, I very rarely find an ensemble cast in these kind of movies where you give a shit about anybody but the leads. It's almost like everybody around them is utterly forgettable. They don't put any effort to give characters to side characters anymore in a lot of blockbusters. And I feel that, is something he was really good at, and you think about the aliens the Marines in Aliens.
Yeah.
Every one of them that's in it for more than 2 seconds, very simple characters, but you really care about them. I get
you feel like you know them.
Remember their names. You remember who they were. And I think this film's very, very similar. Yeah.
Well, one of the infamous stories from Aliens, and it's the choices he makes and how his craft works. One of the stories I love from Aliens, we'll come back to the Abyss, but it's applicable for the point I'm trying to make, is the Marine scenes. Everyone absolutely loves the Marines in Aliens. And all the scenes at the start of the movie where they've got all the banter and the camaraderie and everything like that, he chose to film that at the end of production so that all the actors were already comfortable with each other and it came across more naturally. And it shows, and it's choices like that that make you fall in love with these characters.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I think a testament to kind of how seriously he takes that, because he understands that's necessary for you to care about these people, and I think it's like I say, I don't think there was anybody in there that was like they weren't like deep characters, but it was they definitely, when they were in peril, you're watching it thinking, oh no, please get away. And you sort of fear for them when there's guns in their face and all the rest of it. It's
even like I say, they don't need a lot of screen time to be memorable. Like I remember Bob Kelso from Scrubs, the character from Scrubs, that actor being in this movie, and he's only in it like a small. But when you see like the waves crashing over at the end and you see his hair all over the place, I was like, oh God, don't die, sort of thing. And it's like, why am I attached to this character? Like he's hardly been in it, but testament to the craft.
Yeah, that was quite a cameo fest. The actually, there was you don't see a lot of that shit, but some familiar faces in there.
Sure.
Cool. Okay. Well, I think I definitely agree on all 3 points. I mean, I think it's hard to talk about this. I know we've drifted off into the rest of Cameron, but it's like this film is so James Cameron.
Yeah.
It's so. I mean, if you talk about authorship or whatever, this is his movie 1000%, you know, and I think it'd be very hard to not look at his career. I think just you mentioned earlier one thing I didn't say. You said about sort of the lighting in this film, and I've got to say, that for me is what really sort of blew me away. But not just that; it's like all the films during this period of his career, the lighting was so amazing. But there's just one word for James Cameron at this point of his career, and that's blue.
I was going to say it's the blue hue. Like I've got the pink reflected on my face right now, but he very much in all the scenes I was like, fuck, there's a lot of blue light and just reflective, but it ties into the whole water vibe. It subconsciously gets under your skin that you just think throughout water.
Yeah. No director has used the color blue as well as James Cameron. Like it's in every one of his films, but like and maybe again that's because of water and that fascination, but it's like Aliens, all of them, you know, the
Terminator.
So many great scenes. Yeah, gorgeous use of the color blue, and it's always there. But the lighting is just so incredible in this film. It's technical masterpiece.
Absolutely.
Right, okay, well, we'll go to ad break, and then when we come back, we can talk about your I guess the things. It'd be interesting to see where you go with this.
I struggled to find some loads, but see what you think. Now let's move on to my 3 dislikes, or loads, if you will. And it was a hard one because it's James Cameron's The Abyss. So I kind of watched it to try to be as critical as possible, and I've pulled some things around it. But you kind of touched on it earlier, to be honest. So the first one for me was the rat scene. And it's a testament to when it was made, because now they would for sure just use a CGI rat. So set the scene. The guy's demonstrating how they can breathe underwater with this technology or with this liquid. And to prove how it works, he grabs your man's rat, who he's very close with. And they've already established this emotional connection with the rat. It's not even like they grab a random rat, which would have been uncomfortable anyway, but they grab one that he's got an emotional attachment with, and because of that, we have an emotional attachment with this rat. And the only way they could have shot that scene is by holding an actual rat underwater. And fair enough, they might have like camera trickery and like get it out, and we'll just make it look longer. But still, it would have been pretty rattling for the poor thing. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah. I think. There was no doubt that poor rat was put into some distress, the problem with it is, without that scene, that technology wouldn't work later in the film. So it's like you have to have that. So it'd be interesting to see, because I think a new version of this was released at cinemas last year. And did you know that it didn't come out in the UK in the cinemas, and it's entirely because of that scene?
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Yes. The BBFC have basically like not giving it a kind of rating at the moment. That's why you can't find it anywhere. It's not on streaming. It's not. The BBC has basically refused to give The Abyss kind of a rating at the moment because of that scene. Like it's, and that, I suppose that's, like you say, a change in times and perspective, and kind of like you say, that would never happen now. Like you wouldn't get away with that. But it's kind of, from my perspective, I think that's a little extreme. Yes, it's an uncomfortable scene, but to like not give the film a rating unless something's done about it. Yeah. I think basically there's a bit of a brouhaha about that. But that's why, if I don't know how you managed to watch this, but it's a very difficult film to find in the UK. Yeah. Like very difficult, unless you get an old VHS or DVD or Blu-ray or whatever of it. Who the hell buys VHS? Where did that come from? Show me age, but unless you can pick it up, it's almost impossible to find on any platform at the moment.
That's mad that it's so difficult to find.
Yeah. But it's because of that scene. So you're absolutely right. In I guess, you're absolutely bang on to nail that as one of the negatives of the film. Because if it's big enough to get the film pretty much banned in the UK, then it's until I'm sure they'll sort it out at some point. They'll probably just replace it with a CG rat or something.
Yeah.
But it's like that doesn't change the fact it happened, I guess.
It's a shame. Well, like I say, it was hard to find one, but I was like, that without a doubt was uncomfortable to watch for me.
Yeah,
set up and pay off. Like I'm well aware that you need it, but I don't know. could have put someone's head in a helmet. I know they do that Ed Harris later on, so it kind of would have been belt and braces. But yeah, I don't know how else they could have done it.
Yeah, and it's kind of that's one of those things where actually I say about setup and payoff. I mean, that sets up and pays off so quickly. The rat kind of it's introduced really just for that scene. I mean, that's the only purpose that rat serves. There is like
happy when he grabbed the rat, you know, when he's in the little pouch, and then he's like, "Oh God, my rat!" And I'm just like, "Oh, get the rat!" So there was that sort of
he does save the rat. There is a lot of sort of focus on that, isn't it? But it's kind of like its narrative kind of purpose really is sort of resolved with that one scene, and it's so yeah, okay, yeah, fair enough. I think that's a good criticism, and yeah, definitely. I mean, it'd be interesting to see if they said no animals were harmed in the making of this film.
That would be a lie. It would be a lie. It's not hard to see that an animal was definitely put through it in this movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's my first point. I think that's unanimous. Like, if anyone watches that movie, that'll be the negative to take away. My second one, and like I say, this isn't. This is me trying my best to criticize this movie because it is gorgeous. It is a perfect movie, set up and payoff and visually and everything like that. But this is going to be funny because I rarely do this. But one of my likes is also going to be under one of my dislikes. So one of this movie's greatest, it's one of this movie's strengths for me is also its weakness, and that's the runtime, the length, and everything that takes so long. So I watched the 2-hour 50 version, and
same.
It's brilliant because it establishes so much, and that's why it's brilliant to watch, and it's absolutely gorgeous from head to toe. You never get bored of watching this movie, but at the same time, it's 2 hour and 50 minutes of underwater. See everyone outdoors, helmet on, just crawling, like back in the ship, back in the water, back in the ship. And although it's gorgeous to watch, it is 2 hours and 50 minutes of water. But then once again, that's me trying my best to criticize it. And it wouldn't work if it was shorter because the payoffs wouldn't work as well. The characters wouldn't be established as well. So I'm well aware why it needs to be that length. But at the same time, I don't think it drags its feet. I want to say it does. But yeah, do you understand the quandary I'm having right now?
And I've got to be honest, my perspective on the two versions has kind of almost done a 180, I think. When I first watched it, I watched the theatrical, and I thought the ending felt a bit twee and rushed. Are you familiar with both? Have you seen both versions?
Yeah.
So like the ending of the first one, from memory, I haven't seen it since probably the first time it came out. I think I've always watched the director's cut since. But the ending, if I remember right, it's basically he accepts he's going to die. The aliens basically save him. He says, "Why did you do that?" They basically show the text message and they go up to the surface.
Yeah.
It's like they take away all the stuff about CNN and all the waves and all that stuff. It's just, oh, we saved you because basically you kind of saved us and we're willing to die and therefore we're saving you in return.
Yeah.
But it's a little cheesy and kind of, and very, very, very much that ending is about their relationship. It's about bringing them two back together. The aliens save them, but kind of there isn't that bigger global perspective. The director's cut takes it to that kind of global thing. So, and I remember when the director's cut came out, everybody was like, so much better. And I think I kind of agreed, but I'm not sure I agree now. What do you think? Talk me through your feelings about the two endings.
As in the theatrical was rushed and it makes it
just like, what do you think about the kind of the director's cut ending, bearing in mind you've said about runtime? What's your feelings about that director's cut ending?
It makes it grander. It makes like there's more at stake. And whereas I feel like the original theatrical cut, it made it more intimate, especially between him and his ex. So it kind of felt like it's their world that's going to be affected, not the world.
Yeah.
So I feel like the two endings give a completely different narrative by just making it slightly sort of a deep impact ending. You know what I mean?
The thing that hit me this time round was just, I felt, as much as I kind of like the spectacle of the tsunamis, it's all a bit rushed. It just feels a bit rushed. And even though which is weird to say in a nearly 3-hour film, but I don't think it actually earns that ending. I think everybody just likes that ending because at the time it was just like when we first saw that, the giant CG waves, we hadn't seen 2012 and Deep Impact and all these other films that had giant waves, and I think it just felt like, wow, okay, that's like really spectacular. But I feel, and this is kind of a criticism I feel of Cameron a little bit, is that he goes for these grand themes. Humanity going to destroy itself, the aliens, it's Day the Earth Stood Still, isn't it? It's basically, that's it. It's the ending of the Day the Earth Stood Still. It's like, you destroy yourselves. If you don't stop destroying yourselves, we will destroy you. Instead,
it felt a bit misplaced in terms of the rest of the movie.
Yeah, that's it. It didn't earn that, I feel, now rewatching it.
Funnily enough, a point that I wanted to make was this movie would run just fine without the NTIs. I don't know what you think of that. I'm not saying it was bad. I like that addition. I liked it, but I'm saying if you removed them, this movie would have still been great. It would have built up the anxiety with the deep sea. The main villain would have been obviously Michael Biehn. That would have been the finale. It would have been absolutely fine. And I think it still would have been applauded. It still would have been championed as one of the greatest Cameron movies ever made. And there was just this extra layer. But
yeah, and Matt, that's a really interesting what if, isn't it? Because you're absolutely right. Because this time round, the first 2 hours are by far the best bit, but some of that is also the stuff that involves the NTIs. So it's kind of, because I do think like the water tentacle scene, I think I just couldn't believe how well that held up, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, talk about like special effects not aging. For CG to look that good in 1989, when it was like the first time really they'd used that morphing technology, one of the first times, that really does look good, that scene.
And talk about, the butterfly effect. If that hadn't been done, we wouldn't have been graced with the T-1000, the liquid metal Terminator, and Terminator 2. That's the first time
and a billion other like really kind of, crap uses of it as well.
Yeah, for sure.
but yeah, that morphing effect, I mean, I just think that's brilliant, that whole scene. So there is that element of mystery. I think, to be honest,
why she tasted it beyond me. That scene where like it's a brilliant scene, but when she's like, I'm like, why the fuck did you taste?
Yeah, that's weird.
It's okay. What is it? Is it alive? Seawater.
I was like, is this the alien creature? And then she's just gone. It's just like an alien comes, we're here to meet your leaders, and you just take a bite. That was definitely, I think all three of us that were watching just went, what?
Bit weird, right?
Not my first thought. Oh, yeah, I'd forgotten that. That's amazing. But I think that water tentacle scene is very intriguing. I love the bit where she's on the lip of, and sees it coming. So I think, is it they should be removed completely, or just...
It would have been my only point was it works without. It works with. I'm not saying it would be better without. I'm just saying it works with or without, and I think that is something to be applauded in itself, that it works both ways.
Yeah, I think it would have had to change a lot narratively, because obviously the NTIs is kind of the reason the whole stuff with the bomb happens. And I think if it just was a kind of nuclear sub incident, you could get a really taut Tom Clancy-esque sort of thriller out of it, sci-fi, military, futuristic, underwater thriller. I don't know. Yeah, would it have worked? Would that be? I don't know if it'd be as good. I don't know if it'd be as good. It would still be brilliant.
Like I said, to go back on the point with the ending and stuff, I think like one of my main points was visually how well this looks, especially when it comes to the practical, especially when it came to the NTI. But the ending, with everything bursting out of the water and stuff, it doesn't look good, in my opinion. It doesn't age well. But I think this is a perfect segue to my final gripe with the movie. And rewatching it, I was just like, and it's very much the finale where Ed Harris is hand in hand with the NTI and they're sort of like drifting across. And the best way to describe it is that scene is just so gay And I don't mean like homosexual, not to be misconstrued, but like back when it was originally 1930s use of the term, very gaily. It's the exact same kind of visuals as the finale when everything's bursting out of the water. It's the visuals in Aliens when you see the ship flying, and it's such a massive contrast when you look at the visuals that were done well, and then you see that, and it's like, oh, that doesn't look good at all. I like the POV, in the ship and everything. Look at the inside now, but him hand in hand with the, yeah, I'm going to stop.
I know what you mean, and to be honest, I agree. I think director's cut or not, I think them saving him is nice. In theory, the whole thing, the way it pans out is it kind of, it's like Cameron wanted to go a little 2001.
Yeah.
It's a bit Peter Pan flying through the air, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's a bit, it's just a bit silly. And I think but they're flying through that sort of tunnel, and there's all these like psychedelic visuals of the ship, of the inside. Yeah. And it just felt like Cameron trying to do sort of 2001. And I think that the thing with Cameron that surprises me so much, and kind of this, you can see this in some of his other films as well, especially the Avatar films, things like that. It's like, I think the man he wants to be and what he's actually very good at directing are such a contrast. Like, I think he sees himself as a bit of a kind of hippie, kind of, kumbaya, I'd like to teach the world to sing kind of guy, let's all get along, violence is bad. Yet he is the best action filmmaker ever in cinema history, and particularly military sci-fi. He seems to hate the military, but he's so fucking good at showing military action. Like, no one does it as good as Cameron, like right through to his latest films. Like, I think The Way of Water just had some stunning action sequences in it. And you just like, and yet he seems to hate violence, abhor technology, like the military.
Well, he does it so well.
But he's not very good at actually putting the real Cameron, I guess that might be, on cap, because I think, like you say, I just found that, the ending just was it just felt a bit naff, actually. It's the only bit I felt was aged poorly.
Throughout with, I'm just going to say Mary Elizabeth, when she constantly makes a point of that, I don't think they mean any harm and stuff like that. And it just, that's the part that didn't really, everything else, like, it feels like it was made yesterday. But that sort of dialogue and like and like just like, oh, these are really nice, like sort of like creatures, let's be friends with them. And like it all builds to this climax where he's Peter and Wendying under the sea with this, it's
it's a bit ET, isn't it, that moment? It's right down. I mean,
it worked for Spielberg, and like that's what Spielberg does well. But Cameron, man, like just stay in your lane.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He's much better, like I say, at that sort of the cold militaristic stuff than he is at the kind of warm humanity. It's like the biggest complaint everyone has about Titanic is Titanic is only a good film when the ship starts sinking. Because basically he's trying to portray like a young couple in love, and it feels so like off. Like it just it doesn't feel like to me anyway. I don't know. I know a lot of people like that movie, but yeah, Titanic is definitely like not his best writing. They don't feel.
I definitely like Titanic, especially from the stuff that he does so well. I grew up with that movie, so maybe it's the nostalgia, but I had a very good time with that movie, Billy Zane. But it's, if I was to think, if that movie didn't exist and someone asked me what kind of Titanic movie do you think James Cameron would make, it would be a salvaging movie. That's how I would see him do it. So the route that he went, the romantic route, I was like, that's not it's weird. You wouldn't think Cameron would make that kind of a Titanic movie.
Yeah, and it's a bit like, for me, the stuff that works in the Avatar films is the world building, the technology, the war, the action, all that stuff, where it's like holding hands and skipping through the trees and plugging your doodah into the that sort of stuff is like just, I don't know, it doesn't feel as authentic to me, weirdly, even though that is the stuff you can clearly tell he absolutely loves. I think he loves that stuff. I think the ending of The Abyss, he probably was just like, I'm really saying something here. But it's just too rushed, it feels a bit too on the nose and just a bit too flippant.
It's exactly that. It's like, oh, why are you helping us? And it's like, love.
Yeah,
because love exists, and it's like, oh, fuck off.
Yeah,
it's just,
I'd actually rather they said because you were willing to die to save us, because he stops them from exploding. It's like they don't mention the bomb at all, but it's like the reality is they know humanity. They've clearly been there a long time studying us.
Yeah,
they must have known the nuke was right next to them, which they probably could have destroyed themselves anyway. So it's like, he was willing to do that. That for me felt like a stronger reason for them to save him than like, oh, you love your wife and you sent her a text.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's the reason.
Yeah, and that's why I think the when it goes more expansive, it goes to the bigger message. I don't know, that message just felt a little too flippant, I think. For the spectacle that he was going for. Although I did love the visual of the tidal wave over the Golden Gate Bridge. I mean, it's something. But it's all a bit too quick.
Which is funny considering its runtime, and one of my main gripes being like the runtime is one of its biggest strength and also its biggest weakness, and then the ending's rushed. It's quite funny that way.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. You know, when the ship comes out of the water, definitely, a bit ropey. Like that's the only point where the model work and stuff didn't look brilliant, I thought. And just I don't know how else it could have ended, really. But I think it's I like where it stopped. I love the fact they've never tried to expand on it. There's no Abyss 2. So
this takes me back to what I said before, that I think it might have ended better had there not been an NTI, had the whole tidal wave thing just take that all out. And the ending for me, if the NTIs were removed, would have been when he slaps her back into reality, and then she wakes up, and then the sort of embrace, and then they get to the surface credits. I think that would have been a bit of a, because they wouldn't have been trying to achieve so much. That small window of the ending, it would have been like, it would have got there naturally. But
that being said, though, I love that scene where Ed Harris is tumbling into the abyss. Like, it's just this beautiful. I mean, almost beautiful, but horrifying. He's just out of control, and I mean, again, like in space, like you think Gravity or whatever, where Sandra Bullock is spinning. It's like it's Ed Harris doing the same thing, where he's just really out of control. It's dark. His lamp has smashed, and he's just tumbling, and you just see him just fall into the darkness. And it's a beautiful shot. And
Absolutely.
I think if that stuff had been cut, cinema would have been lessened for its loss. And I do think I did like that whole kind of texting up, and that worked for me. I thought that whole scene and him realizing he was going to die. I mean, a really bleak version of it could be just like he just sits on the bottom and then the credits roll.
That would be Mike. I'm a sucker for a down ending.
Yeah,
that would have been
And her just crying, weeping over the microphone. Zoom in on her face, the tears, and then cut to credits.
credits. Yeah,
we love it. That's
Brilliant.
us.
Brilliant stuff.
Anything else? So that's your 3 points. I think those are all fair. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't. Yeah, I don't think there's really that the ending for me is the big one. I think, but I think otherwise, I was amazed at just how well it holds up.
Absolutely, and like I say, it's a testament to the practical effort and that he still does to this day. There's a reason why he's still going and still absolutely widening people's eyes.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. So, Jack, favorite quote time. So this is one of my favorite bits, especially
for me. I mean, with Cameron in a lot of his movies, he's got so many badass lines, and it just feels natural, and the camaraderie and everything. And rewatching this, I thought that would be the kind of line I'd pick, but it's really not. It's a hilarious line. I thought it was hilarious, and not for the right reasons either. It was it's at the start of the movie. I think it's ridiculous, but it's so funny. Right, so it's at the start of the movie, and Ed Harris is first established. He's like, he sort of stumbles up the phone, he grabs it, and it establishes the kind of person he is, but it just looks ridiculous. He answers the phone, and they're telling him the situation of what him and his team need to do. And he's like, yeah, I'm calm. I'm a calm person. Is there a reason I shouldn't be calm? And then he does this contorting with his face, and he's like, what? And it's just ridiculous, but I absolutely love that line. Yeah, the mold, the change in his face, it's very like sort of theater, very But that was my favorite line in that movie, just for his facial expression, Ed Harris.
Yeah, that's that kind of big shouty line sort of thing. It's I miss that. That's a very 80s thing.
Yeah. So, like I say, they're just they were like, look surprised, like be very calm, and then just look very. And I like you watch it, and it's like, how many times did they do that scene? Cameron was like, no, that's good, moving on. It's like, are you sure? Because I felt I've got a better one in me. No, let's just move on. That's fine.
Yes, yeah, it's very good. Like I say, it's not a film filled with quotable lines, I don't think, but yeah, definitely that gave me a chuckle.
But it does it the same, like does it later on, like you were talking about the gravitas of that scene when she dies and she's like sort of hitting the helmet and stuff. And it's just him going, no, like it didn't look good. Like for me, I thought him like, it just felt like a bit over the top, like overacting. His screaming with the what and with that scene and I love Ed Harris, but yeah, I just thought that's a bit funny, and it really shouldn't have been.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, no, that scene worked for me. I think it's more because of her performance. Actually, I think like because she kisses the glass, you know, as she's drowning, and I thought that was and I guess when you're looking into the eyes of your wife as she drowns in front of you, I mean,
Oh yeah, it's such a heavy scene, but like I say, it was Ed Harris's reaction, and just.
Do you like Ed Harris's performance overall?
Yeah, absolutely. He does calm so well. Like, it's funny that he's established as a calm person, but the moments where he's shouting and not being calm, I do like him in the movie for sure.
I like, I think he's quite a very likable lead in it. Actually, he's
for sure. Which is
he does that thing which is always kind of works for me. And again, it's quite a Cameron thing. It's that the guy who cares, he gives a shit about his people. And he does everything for them, and he's clearly like set up as a good guy to follow, and you can believe that will follow him, because they could have just made him a bit more of a dick or whatever, but he's always got sort of best interests at heart, and I think it's good.
It was I completely agree, and like I say, when you're James Cameron and you're making a James Cameron movie, to cast Ed Harris in a role, and well, we'll get to this, but cast Michael Biehn as the villain as opposed to leading the hero. Such a decision, and it was a brilliant choice.
Yeah, very much so. They set up that dynamic really well with his character. We'll probably, like I say, we'll talk about that in a minute. But I think Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio's performance, I've got to give a shout out to as well, because I think she is terrific in it. I think
absolutely.
I think because she encapsulates so much of what we said earlier, about that sort of the tough kind of woman in a man's world, industry. She's sort of cold when she needs to be, but she's also shows a lot of warmth and humanity, and obviously apart from tasting the alien, it is
Yeah.
Weird. It's so weird. But apart from that, I think she's her character, again, like, you warm to her, and that's intentional. You warm to their relationship, it's intentional, but you also kind of see everyone around her warm to her, and I think that's really a good sort of change of character for her, and
completely
whilst without losing any of her strength. I don't think it makes her like sappy. She's tough to the end, and I think that's
absolutely.
She plays that really, really well. So cool. So let's go to ad break, and then we can come back and talk about Michael Biehn and the very unstable Lieutenant Coffee. Okay, now we're going into our final section of episode 6, and this is where we're going to talk about the my chosen actor from the last movie, which was Michael Biehn. And I think suffice to say, Michael Biehn is one of those actors, kind of interesting guy, because he's in hands down two of my favorite films of all time. He's been in some great movies, but he just never quite sort of seemed to kind of maybe he didn't get his due, I don't know, but I tell you what, I thought revisiting this, he's great in this. Like, he's great in this. It's like, it's and so different, such a different performance, because I've fanboyed enough about Aliens and all the episodes so far, but basically, like, Hicks was just like my hero. You know what I mean? Like, I thought he was brilliant as Hicks, and loved that dynamic with Sigourney Weaver. So to see him sort of in this, being an absolute polar opposite, psychotic, man with a mission. Really intense performance. I thought, he plays the kind of psycho part really, really well in this. What do you think?
Yeah. No, yes to all of the above. He's such an intense character when he descends that I thought that it didn't seem like he was acting intense. It seemed like he'd actually descended into madness. And in terms of 80s villains, they're kind of, looking back now, they're almost like cartoon characters to a certain degree, but he really isn't. And I think he's such an understated actor because, like you say, he plays a hero so well, but he also plays a villain so well. Like not just in this, but he was like Johnny Ringo in Tombstone. We'll get back to that, but he plays both a hero and a villain so well. And I was trying to figure out what it was about his style that I like so much. And I don't know why I didn't get his due, because he's so phenomenal. And it's all in the eyes. Like, he doesn't need to say much, but if you just look at his eyes during certain scenes, when he's talking about the missile, when he's talking about like what's what, and he does the same in Terminator, he does the same in Aliens, he can convey so much with an eye dot or a wide glare. You can either look like he's on your side or against you with just the subtlest tweak. And I think that's what I've pinpointed down to his main strength being. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, he's in that sort of pantheon of actors who, like say, very, very good at with eyes. I think I put him in the same sort of leagues, like in that sort of way as like Andrew Lincoln or someone like that. Where they can do so much with an expression, and I think he has to go to the edges of overacting because of what the psychosis is doing to him. But the whole way through, it's fairly
believable.
It's intense, and kind of you're scared for everyone because he genuinely feels like a threat. And what's interesting is he's not a bad guy in the sense that he is an evil person or he's got like an evil mission from the beginning. He doesn't come into this as a bad guy. Yeah. He just comes into it as a Navy SEAL. He's just led by circumstance to end up where he does.
No, I completely agree. He's got in every role. Like I say, he is an understated villain. Everything I've seen him in, I'll follow him anywhere. Like, I love, like in Terminator, he does not have much evidence to prove that there's a Terminator pursuing Linda Hamilton, but she believes him because he's got such an authoritative presence. It's just like, yep, I'll follow you anywhere. Same for me. If he burst through my wall and said, there's a cyborg sent back in time, follow me, I'll be like, yeah, where we're going.
The guy ended up being massively typecast. He did within about 5 films, he did 3 Navy SEALs. So it's just like he was the go-to Navy SEAL guy. But I think at that point in the late 80s, he was on that cusp of potentially becoming a leading man. And it's ironic to me that kind of Bill Paxton kind of became what Michael Biehn should have been. As much as I love Bill Paxton, don't get me wrong, he's great, but he very different kind of actor, I guess. But kind of, you never saw in Aliens, you never would have thought Hudson was the one who was going to become like a leading man. And
no, not at all.
Wasn't, So it's interesting how that kind of played out in their lives.
We're talking about obviously Michael Biehn, like it's not so much as that he didn't get his due. Like, what he did in his movies was so good that I'm almost baffled that he didn't go further. Like, I'll use a brilliant example, as I said before. Like, my favorite role of his is Johnny Ringo from Tombstone, and it's not just how it was his dedication, it was his gun skills. Like, one of the most infamous scenes of Tombstone is when he's shown off his gun skills to opposite Val Kilmer, and when you see how skilled he was, it's almost like someone was out to get him to stop him going further, because it's mad how he didn't. And it's rewatching this, I'm just like, he doesn't feel like an 80s villain. Like, he's so intense. He's such a good actor. It's so bizarre, which is why when I saw him in Planet Terror, I was like, it was a surprise. I was like, oh shit, like Michael Biehn, like you don't see him often, which is bizarre.
Yeah, Planet Terror was such a return to form for him. Like, it really was. Yeah. It was great. But I was doing some reading into him, and there's a couple of, I don't think there's any hard and fast reason why he sort of didn't make it, but I think some people have this idea that it's because when he found out he was going to die in Alien 3, he basically asked for a lot of money to use his likeness because he was pissed. He was really pissed. And I think some people feel that maybe he was kind of blacklisted a little bit because he took the studio off. And fair play. I mean, it's one of the biggest. We said it. Anybody who hasn't seen episode 2, go back and watch our episode 2 review of Alien 3. But we said it at the time. It's one of the biggest disservices to any character in cinema. Like, for sure. And it's they are so dismissed in that sequel, and it's disgusting. I think, really, given how big a character they were in Aliens. But so I can understand why he was so angry. And he ended up on the cutting room floor of Terminator 2. I know it was only one scene, so he kind of just had a couple of those moments. But then, like you say, he was so well praised in Tombstone, and that was a big film, very popular. And
there's a scene, and it goes back to what I said about him being a brilliant eye actor, and he can convey so much. We'll get a clip if you're watching this on YouTube. There's a scene in Tombstone which is amazing acting, and it's when he realizes that he's not facing off against Kurt Russell. He realizes that he's actually facing off against Val Kilmer, who he knows he's not as good as.
Play for blood, remember?
I was just fooling about.
I wasn't. And this time, it's legal.
All right, longer. Let's do it.
And you can see the costume when he does this wide-eyed, like, he is shit scared when he realizes that, and he's just like, oh, like, I was just fooling around, man. And Val Kilmer's like, I wasn't. And it's the look on his face. Like, I remember watching it when I was really young, and I was like, I'm seeing a grown man fearing for his life, and it's because Michael Biehn did such a good job. Eye actor, best eye actor out there. There we go. That's how I feel.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's really good actually, because I hadn't thought of that until you've sort of just talked about it. But you're absolutely right. I think that is one of the things that sort of makes it. He does crazy eyes quite well, and but he's intense. He's got that intensity. It'd be such a shame if that is what happened. I mean, I know he had a lot of problems with drink and stuff like that off camera as well, which is a real shame. And I think that maybe hindered him. But I mean, he doesn't reckon it did. He doesn't reckon it did. And I think, but you look at, it's funny because he ends up, he does Tombstone, big role, really good, but he's still a secondary character. Then the next thing I remember seeing him in was when he's in The Rock, and he's in Navy SEAL again, and it was but he's only in it for a short while, but I loved seeing him. I was like, oh, it's brilliant. Yeah, it's the next role of his. I thought, now, and then he just sort of disappeared, and it was one of those strange things where he just
ended up in that. Was it Cherry Hill?
Yes. So I mean, I was going to mention that as one of the things I actually do. I genuinely, I've got a bit of a sort of soft spot for that film. I don't know why. Like, I hate most of that period of slasher films, but that one for some reason, and it might be because he's in it. And I think the premise is quite funny, but but he was really good in it. But it marked that move from, like, I guess, handsome leading man material to you're now going to be sheriffs, and you're going to be old, bounty hunters.
Old sheriff. Funny enough, Planet Terror was like, yep, old sheriff.
Yeah, exactly. And he's now playing a sheriff in a Killer Kangaroo movie, which is coming out this year. So there's definitely that point in a career, isn't there? If you haven't made it, then you start becoming that thing, but you're not young enough to be the lieutenant anymore. So what can you be? You're a sheriff. You're ex-military. You become the grizzled old veteran. And so it's a shame. Like, he hasn't done more. He's done a lot of computer games and things like that. But where I was really surprised to see him recently, he popped up, and it was a brilliant episode. Did you see him in The Mandalorian season 2?
I haven't seen The Mandalorian.
Right. Well, definitely. Even if you don't want to watch that whole thing, just to watch Michael Biehn back on your screen, I would watch the episode that he's in of Mandalorian season 2, because it's one of the best episodes of that show. He plays a grizzled bounty hunter, and basically it's where they introduce Ahsoka as her live action version. So you've got Rosario Dawson with the tentacles and what.
Yeah.
But basically, he has a face down. It's basically they did this really clever thing where it's a samurai movie and a western at the same time. But what they do is they lean into the samurai aspect of the Jedi, because you've got Ahsoka facing off against another person, and that becomes a kind of lightsaber fight, But at the same time, they cut in between that with the Mandalorian facing off against Michael Biehn in a proper Western showdown. So it's basically a cowboy in space. I guess you could add it to the Tombstone.
You can do it. He has my support.
But he's great in it, and it was just so good. There's very few actors that will pop up on screen in something where I'll suddenly be like, brilliant. It's him. Yeah, I'm so pleased to see him. It's he's definitely one of those actors for me, because he's got such a big place in my in my cinema canon because of what he did in the 80s. I think it's just such a shame he never quite hit the heights. But sure. Are there any other roles of his that you've seen, or kind of
those are pretty much the ones that always stayed with me. I mean, like, obviously got Kyle Reese, we've got Hicks, Johnny Ringo. Those are the ones that stayed with us. Like, I loved them so. Like, I think I'm in the minority in that. Out of the Terminator franchise, the first one's my favorite, and I think that's very much there's more stakes sort of thing. Like, I love everything for what Terminator 2 was. It ran more like a action sci-fi. The first one had some horror elements. It felt like humans outrun. It was. And Michael Biehn is the leading man, in Schwarzenegger being the villain. I was just there for it so much so that there's a director's cut of Terminator 2 and Michael Biehn's in it.
Yeah.
If you've seen that, and I was so sad when they cut his scenes, because I just loved seeing him again in the trench coat, in the Nikes, like showing up to be like the voice of reason or our conscience. And when those scenes were cut, I was like, because I loved him so much in the first one, that I was almost angry that they cut his scenes. But hey ho.
Yeah. It's a shame. I mean, it's a shame they couldn't find a way to bring him back into that, because he said he wouldn't do any of the Terminator films, the later ones where they have kind of brought people back, or they've been able to retcon it.
Rightly so. I mean, they're absolute garbage, let's be honest. But
and it's a shame. I mean, maybe he'd have made a better one, if he'd been in it. I mean, he's been so shafted, hasn't he? I mean, Alien 3, absolutely dicked by the studio. Then they announced the Neil Blomkamp film, and I'm like, oh, brilliant, he finally gets to play that part, and then he gets dicked again, and it's just like, this poor guy can't win. And but he's still out there, he's still plying his trade. And like I say, killer kangaroo movie this year. I think it's called Rippy overseas. I don't know what it's called in the UK. It had a different title, but basically that's due out. And he's fighting a killer kangaroo. So guys still taking a paycheck.
Yeah, brilliant.
Michael Biehn, we still love you, and I think for just literally those few roles we've mentioned, those key roles, he's cemented his place. I think as one of my not favorite actors as an actor. I don't think I wouldn't say he's like up there as the greatest actors of all time, but I think he is one of my favorite on-screen presences, just purely because.
I know, absolutely. Those films. I've always got time for Michael Biehn.
I think what we're going to do, we're introducing a new sort of wrap up to this. We're going to say one film that we would recommend that everybody watches, if you can pick one from his career, and one that we've missed. So over to you, Jack.
So my choice for Michael Biehn, for anyone that hasn't seen it, I'm not big into westerns. Okay, but I very much have a lot of time for Tombstone, and one of my favorite characters in that, as well as Val Kilmer, is very much Michael Biehn, is Johnny Ringo. And I said it before, like, so much eye acting, but his skills with a gun are almost better than they had any right to be at the time that the movie was made. When westerns were turned out, they were all very much like sort of samey, but man, his dedication to being a cowboy. Tombstone, for anyone that hasn't seen it, please get involved. It's my favorite Michael Biehn performance.
And I think for me, for mine, it's got to be Aliens. It's my favorite, pretty much my favorite film of all time. If you wanted to watch one Michael Biehn performance, it's that one. Very, very close second would be Kyle Reese. Both just bad characters in very different ways. He just brings those characters to life so well. So, and what about, is there anything on his catalogue that you haven't seen that you think looks interesting?
Well, you said it yourself, Mandalorian. I feel like I'm going to have to get involved now. You've convinced me, especially like coming back as a space cowboy. People have recommended that series to me time and time again. all they had to say was Michael Biehn's a space cowboy in it, and that would have sold me straight away. So I'll get there sooner rather than later now.
I think for me, I was looking, and he made a film in 1981 called The Fan, which is basically a stalker thriller where he plays like an obsessed fan stalking Lauren Bacall. So, and apparently it was really violent, and Lauren Bacall was really upset about how violent the end film was. So 1981, we're kind of talking, around the time of the slashers and stuff like that. I don't think it's a slasher film, but yeah, that sounds really interesting. And he plays like a proper psycho in it. So I'm up for seeing that. A really intense young sort of really young, intense Michael Biehn, basically squaring off against James Garner and Lauren Bacall. So sign me up for that one. So Jack, what are we going to be watching next time?
Next time for link 7 in the chain, we are going to be watching Ed Harris as Hank Blaine in George A. Romero's Creepshow.
Wow, okay. Wow, all right. That is, as soon as you said Ed Harris, I thought you were going in a different direction. So that, nice choice. That's brilliant. I haven't seen that again in a while. So,
anthology. Yeah. Very one of my favorite anthologies of all time. So stylistic. Looking forward to picking your brain on the next episode.
Fantastic. Great stuff. Okay, well, that wraps us up for episode 6, and hope you enjoyed it. Please check out our other works. So check out Dark Matter Films. We've got actually a couple of new shorts launching this month, so I'll be rolling those out. They'll be live by the time you hear this. So check those out, and all the other sort of content that we have on there from other filmmakers and my own work. And Jack.
Yeah, as always, head on over at jackedinmovies.com. We've got articles, reviews, recommendations, and more. Lately, you can see the movies I was mentioning at the start, the full reviews for Beetlejuice, and Hundreds of Beavers. You can read the full reviews if you head on over to our site there.
Brilliant. Great stuff. And thanks to everyone for listening. Please do give us a like and subscribe. And we really want to hear from you. We really want some comments. So if you've made it to the end, please let us know what you think in the comments on Spotify or YouTube. And just tell your friends. We've definitely got a chain going here. It's well and truly dangling. And I think we're really excited about where we can go from here. So follow us in this random journey.
Until then, see you on the next link.
See you on the next link.